Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing you another edition of the Pest Geek podcast, Living the Wildlife. So, been out of the loop for a little bit, had some surgeries recently, so look, I'm getting back into the swing of things, and so wanted to talk today about deer repellents, because I do think this is an area of potential growth for wildlife control operators and pest control operators that we're not taking full advantage of, as we have exploding deer populations across the country, and sometimes some wildlife agencies are better than others at trying to reduce the pressure of those numbers, as more and more deer are realizing that suburban and even urban areas are basically hunt-free zones. Hopefully that'll change soon, but probably not soon enough. More people are realizing that deer are just chowing up their property. So I think this is an area of potential financial growth for the wildlife control operator, pest control operator interested in getting into this. So I wanted to give a little bit of a background about deer repellents so you can understand them a little bit better. And then we'll talk about which repellents work the best. So why don't we get started? All right. So this is basically from my website, wildlifecontrolconsultant.com. This is two recent blogs that I've done, and the date we have now is October 24th, 2020. So I'm dating myself here. So this is something you can certainly look up on your own, or you can simply get it off the screen as we're talking here before you. But if you're just listening, carry along. And so we're going to talk about basically Repellent Theory. Okay, so how do we categorize, or I shouldn't say how do the researchers and scientists categorize repellents? So let's first define what a repellent is. A repellent is a chemical that's designed to be aversive or cause a reaction, a negative reaction to the animal that it's being used for. So, and that's the key word there, a chemical. So this makes it different than frightening devices. So frightening devices do not rely on chemicals. They rely on sensory stimulation without the use of a chemical. That would be sound and light, or sound and light together, or some sort of bioacoustical issue. Repellents have to be a chemical. And whenever you start thinking about chemicals, you have to start thinking about Environmental Protection Agency, because the EPA governs, or regulates, I should say, regulates the use of chemicals that are involved in pest control, and repellency does come underneath that legal issue. You may have heard an earlier podcast where I might have mentioned how quirky it is, because you can have something like coyote urine. And if you're using coyote urine for a trap to attract an animal to the location, that's not considered a repellent. But once you use coyote urine to, let's say, drive a deer away, now it becomes a repellent and is now under the authority of the Environmental Protection Agency. That's when you start thinking about FIFRA. That's the fungicide, insecticide, rodenticide registration, federal act. I think I have that right. The Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, Rodenticide Act. There it is, FIFRA. All right, so I'm going to get it out there eventually. So that is something that you have to understand when we're dealing with repellents. So one thing is you want to make sure whenever you're working with repellents, is it EPA registered, needs to have the number, and is it registered in your state? Not all states require. There are what's called 25Bs. Not all states require those to be registered in the state. However, many states do require 25Bs. Those are the minimum risk pesticides that don't have registration with the federal government, the EPA, but some states do require it. So make sure whatever chemical you're using, that you're using it legally, and that you are licensed by your state. Most states, I'm not aware of too many, I know of one, that requires anyone using chemicals on someone else's property, you're going to have a commercial license. There's one exception that I'm aware of. There may be others, and this may be a little out of date, but when I was in Nebraska, they did not require a pesticide license for using repellents on someone else's property. But that could be changed. Make sure you check that. All right, so enough of the legal. Make sure you're legal, that you have your proper insurance, okay? All right, so what are the categories? How do we categorize repellents? Well, the first method is pain. So some repellents work on the basis of pain. The animal interacts with it, whether it bites it and gets it on its tongue, or it rubs up against it and gets it into its eyes, or maybe it inhales it. There's a negative pain reaction. That would be a repellent that works on the basis of pain. Another type of repellent would be what's called a taste-based repellent. That is, as the deer chomps on something, it chomps on it because it wants something that's palatable and delicious and that it can digest. Well, the chemical changes and alters that taste and makes it unbecoming or unfavorable to the deer. Now, the next one would be fear-based repellents. This is where the deer or other animal are, when they smell the product or interact with the product, get a sense of doom. Perhaps it has a predator-type odor to it that reminds them of something that wants to eat them, and that would be a fear-based repellent. Lastly, we have a category called aversive conditioning repellents, and these are repellents that rely on that sick stomach feeling you got when you went to that dodgy restaurant or maybe Coach Roach. Okay, so those are the four main categories of repellents. And the reason why that's important is because they work in different ways. And so if you're using a repellent and someone's saying, I was using Capsaicin, well, that's a pain-based repellent and they didn't have success with it, then perhaps you need to transition over to one of the other repellents. It's important for you as professionals to understand what the options are and how they work. One of the downsides of repellents is that most of them require the deer to chew a plant first to interact with it. The fear-based repellents often do not. Those would be what's also called as area repellents. So you have contact repellents and you have area repellents. Contact, the deer must make contact with the repellent in order to experience the repelling qualities. Area repellents mean that the deer only has to necessarily smell the product or perceive the product in order to get that repelling action. As a rule of thumb, contact repellents work better than area repellents. But that's not always the case, because area repellents, the wind blows the wrong direction, the deer may not even perceive it, right? Because the wind's going the wrong direction. So there's a lot of variabilities here, but you need to keep those four categories in mind. Is this a pain-based repellent? Is it a taste-based repellent? Is it a fear-based repellent? And is it an aversive conditioning repellent? Aversive conditioning, let me sort of lay that out again, is the animal eats it, everything goes down fine, it gets a sick stomach later on, it remembers that it ate that bush and realized there was something about that bush that caused it to have a sick stomach, and then it avoids that area in the future. One of the downsides of these contact repellents, where the deer has to bite and consume it first in order to experience the repellency, is that there's going to be some plant damage. You need to be sure that your customers understand there will be some damage initially before the deer realize this is a bad place to be. Okay. If you have clients who are just like, if I lose a leaf off of that plant, there's just going to be hell to pay. Repellents are not the way to go. I'm just probably going to tell you, unless an area repellent may help, but it's probably going to be better for you just to have fenced the area or use something a little bit more aggressive. Okay. So that has to be understood straight away. You've got to understand those four modes of action. Is it a pain-based repellent? Is it a taste-based repellent? Fear-based repellent? Or an aversive conditioning repellent? Now, those are the four categories, but understand you can have a repellent that actually uses more than one mode of action. In fact, most of your repellents are going to try to incorporate a taste repellent as well as the other mode. So let's say, for example, you have a pain-based repellent, let's say a capsaicin type repellent. It may add in another product, maybe some garlic or something like that, where it's going to try to have some taste effect as well. But there's generally going to be a primary mode. Some products will have a secondary mode as well. All right. Hope I didn't confuse you there. But understand those primarily modes of action, all right? So now let's get to the thick of it here, and let's look at what are some of the actual active ingredients. And so we want to be sure we talk about active ingredients. When you read the label, and again, these are pesticides, you say, well, they're not killing anything. That's true, but according to the law, any chemical used to repel is under FIFRA, and that means it's under EPA regulation. So it's a pesticide. The pesticide means that you must follow the label because the label is the law. So you have to be properly licensed. You need to be properly insured. If you have any questions about this sort of thing, you need to contact your state's Department of Agriculture. Those of you who live in Canada and other areas, you need to find out what is the regulating agency that governs pesticide use in your country, in your province, in your particular area. You need to do your field work to make sure you're following the law. You may say, well, there's not really much risk with this sort of stuff. I get it, right? I understand. It's not like this isn't strychnine, right? This isn't zinc phosphide or aluminum phosphine gas or aluminum phosphide, right? So this is, granted, these are pretty low-end products in terms of their toxicity and threat to humans and other animals. That's absolutely true, but they're not safe, right? We can't call them safe. No pesticide can be called safe, and you're still applying a chemical product on someone else's property, and you need to be sure you read the label and that you follow the regulatory conditions within your particular legal jurisdiction. That's just the right thing to do, and you want to be sure you are acting in an appropriate way because the label is the law, and violations of labels can bring some serious consequences, particularly when you're getting beyond the state rules that you violated, but when you're starting to get into the federal rules that you violated, just don't go down that road. Make sure you're good to go. All right, so let's talk about active ingredients. You're going to read that label. All pesticide labels must tell you what the active ingredient is and its percentage. As a rule of thumb, you want higher percentages than lower percentages of the active ingredient. The active ingredient is the part of the pesticide that gets the job done. Everything else, what they call the inert ingredients, just help that product just stay, maybe they help it persist in the environment. Maybe it helps to keep it liquid. Maybe it keeps it from freezing. Maybe it helps to keep it from washing away. But the active ingredient is what you want to focus on when we're dealing with a deer repellent or any other repellent in this case. So you want to focus on that. And so we're going to go over some of the big ones. I'm not covering every active ingredient, but we're going to cover the big ones. And so let me back up here a little bit and let you know that deer repellents have been researched extensively over the past 40 years. And even prior to the 80s, I believe. I think there's some articles that even occur prior to that. The good news is that there's research, right? So we're talking about something that isn't just so Aunt Mary said this product worked. No, we're talking about people who have done the research and have repeated it and had the statistical analysis, published their findings, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's been done repeatedly in a variety of different ways. That's the good news. The bad news is all the repellents fail. Let me repeat that for you. All the repellents fail. What do I mean by fail? I mean they don't work 100% of the time. So you need to be sure that your clients understand what they're getting into. Because if you have high expectations, and your clients have high expectations, let's say, you're overselling what you're doing here a little bit to try to drum up some business. Oh, this will be the magic cure. You are not telling the truth. And those of you who are listening to this because you want to know what the professionals are hearing, let me tell you, if any professional tells you this stuff will work 100% of the time, they're lying to you. All right, so don't believe that. It's simply not true. What makes repellents work better? Well, the simple answer is repellents work better in conditions where there is low deer density and when the deer have something else to eat. So for example, if you have one field next to another field and you treat one field with a repellent, but the deer can go over and eat at the other field unmolested, your repellents have a better chance of working. In fact, you may be amazed. You're like, wow, this really works. And it will. Until this field gets eaten up. And then the deer have to hold their nose and come back to your field. So here's how that works. When you have a repellent and you're using it, make sure the neighbors aren't. But understand, once the deer ravage your neighbor's yards and there's nothing else available for them, they're going to ravage the one that you treated. That's just the reality of it. Number 3, different repellents work better in different seasons. So some repellents may work better in the wintertime. Some repellents will work better in the spring. This is where you as a professional have to keep good records. I'm sure many of your states require you to keep records of the type of pesticides you're using, but even if you're not required to record your use of repellents, you have got to do it as a professional because you need to keep track of what's working in your area. Because when we're looking at the scientific research, it's done in different parts of the country, and they're not going to be replicating all the potential conditions that would affect the repellent in your particular area. Because, and also remember, conditions change. So if you have a heavy snowfall, where the deer are incredibly stressed, then understand that probably nothing's going to work. But if you're in a year where the deer have access to other food sources, it's not that bitterly cold, maybe you have somebody out there feeding them who shouldn't be doing that, but in any event, the pressure is down, maybe there was a really successful hunting season that year, you will find your repellents working amazingly well. The other thing you want to think about is repellents work better when they're done before the deer find your plants. That's going to be a hard sell because typically your clients are going to call you after their plants have already been found. So that's the business side of that is going to be difficult for you. And I wish I had the magic answer to solve that particular problem, but you've got to find a way to get your clients convinced to use the repellents before the deer find their plants that particular year. So you're going to have to understand there's probably going to be a little bit growth and training time. So this is something, if you're a little bit slow in the wintertime or maybe slower in the early spring, this may be something you want to dabble with, maybe even do some of the work for free as you're getting some experience. I'm not telling you how to run your business. That's not my purpose here. But I'm just trying to brainstorm with you how you're going to roll this out so you can become comfortable with how you're going to use this particular product and find out what types of marketing techniques and how your own application will work in different areas. So I'll leave that to you. Would love to get some feedback. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Okay, so those are the general principles about how the best way to use repellents. You want to use them where there's low pressure, if possible. You want to be sure that the deer have something else to eat. That makes them more effective. You want to apply them before the deer find the plants. And then, of course, you're always going to follow whatever the label guidelines are. Okay? Those 4 principles. All right, so let's talk about the specific active ingredients, because that's what we want to focus on here. So the first one is ammonium soaps of higher fatty acids. Your label may phrase it a little bit differently. It may call them ammonium soaps. You may see higher fatty acids. There may be some different ways it's phrased, but you should see something similar to that on products with this particular active ingredient. This is one of the aversive conditioning ones. Again, the deer has to eat, consume the product, and get a sick stomach out of it. So there's going to be damage after you're using this particular product because the deer has to feed on it in order to get that aversive conditioning. The research shows that generally you can reduce damage to the plants by about 50%. That's pretty good. Again, but it's not 100%. None of these repellents are 100%. Okay? Now, you may get something higher than that. Often these research projects are done in areas with high deer densities. Some of them, the numbers are amazing how high in terms of how they calculated it out. Normally, most states want to have, this is a rule of thumb, 20 deer per square mile. When you start getting to deer at 100 deer per square mile, that's like they're ravaging everything. That's when you get those 6-foot browse lines, when you start getting up to the 100 deer per mile. Okay, to kind of give you a little rules of thumb to kind of work that out in your particular area. Okay, but ammonium soaps of higher fatty acids and heavy deer pressure, you probably should get about a 50% reduction. Okay, how about capsaicin? I've already mentioned capsaicin is a pain-based repellent. That is, when the deer eats it or gets it around their eyes, there's a burning sensation. It's the same stuff out of your chili peppers, and that's the kind of effect we're going for. They found you could basically get some effectiveness for up to 2 weeks, because again, all these repellents have to be reapplied. So heavy rainfall, heavy moisture, heavy plant growth is going to affect how well these products work. Because plant growth, when the plant grows, obviously the part of the plant that's new hasn't been treated with whatever contact repellent that you've sprayed on it. Okay, so capsaicin can work for about 2 weeks. And again, read the label, because if you're using, I've seen some products out there, they're using 0.062% capsaicin. You're like, what? That's like barely anything. And the researchers agreed, and they're like, no, it doesn't work at that level. It's like probably like adding a little pepper to your food if you like pepper. You got to get it up to that 6.2% or higher. Okay, but it does wash off. So think about that. You want to think about reading that label, making sure you don't just look at it as, oh, it says capsaicin. What is the concentration of that capsaicin? Because there's no effect at the 0.062%. You got to get it at the 6.2%, which is significantly higher. Okay. How about coyote urine? Okay, coyote urines can work. They work on the basis of fear. Make sure you're getting something that's packaged for use as a pesticide. It means there needs to be an EPA label on them. There are products out there that are available for that. Don't just go buy it from your local trapping supply store and start squirting it around, because understand that's probably hasn't been sterilized. So if you get it into a crack, you may get an infection. I heard of a trapper who was doing some work with trapping, had some coyote urine. Some of it got onto his hands. He had cuts in his hands and got an infection from it. Was it from the urine? I don't know. I'm just taking him at his word. Just be careful. Urine is urine. Pee is pee. Treat it like such. Okay. But I'm telling you, don't use off-label urine in the field when you're working at using it as a pesticide. Using it as a lure to catch a coyote, that's perfectly legal. When you start using it as a pesticide, that's because you're looking for that repellent action. Now you're getting into the world of FIFRA. You don't want to be going down that road. Make sure you're buying something that's sold as a repellent that has the coyote urine as the active ingredient. Okay. There was some efficacy with coyote urine. The researchers were not that impressed. In fact, I'm not aware of a bobcat urine that's been labeled for deer at this time, but the research showed that bobcat urine actually had a better efficacy rate for repellency than coyote urine. Go figure. Don't know why. Maybe somebody will get their bobcat urine registered with the EPA. All right, dried blood. Now, it may be kind of weird. This is from slaughterhouses. It's typically pig blood or bovine or cow blood, and they capture that. They basically dehydrate it, pelletize it, and that can be used to you sprinkle it around the foundation of your plants, and that can work up to 11 weeks to reduce deer damage to your area. Other studies found that the efficacy of this particular product was even lower. So again, it can be a hit or miss with some of these products. So when you hear me giving you numbers on efficacy, take those as sort of the upper end, assume it's going to be worse for you, and then that way, with low expectations, you'll always be surprised. Okay. Thiram. Thiram is a fungicide that's used to control the growth of fungus on various plants. But what they've discovered is that it also changes the plant's taste with plants that it's sprayed on. And so it actually had a pretty good efficacy on repelling deer by radically changing the taste. One of the downsides of thiram is that it can leave a powdery white residue on plants. So if you have customers who are really into the aesthetics of their plants, understand that the thiram can leave a white powdery residue on it, can change the coloration of their plants a little bit. But its efficacy actually was pretty good compared to some others. And so thiram would be an active ingredient you would want to look for. The last one is putrescent whole eggs. And yeah, it's just basically they take eggs and scramble up. It's the sulfur, they believe, inside of the eggs that gives it that predator type feel, and so deer are afraid of it because of the sulfur that's inside of it, and that's a sign of usually predator presence because there's sulfur in meat, and predators eat meat, right? And that comes out through their urine and other areas as well. What they found was the products with this active ingredient had the highest efficacy overall of all the repellents tested. So this is across multiple different studies. On average, putrescent whole eggs won the day. There are exceptions, but if you had to roll the dice and only pick one repellent, putrescent whole eggs are the one you want to pick. So, bottom line is, understand all the repellents fail. None of them are going to be 100% guaranteed. However, if you have the right conditions and you're applying them properly, you repeat their use, you're putting them on before the deer begin hitting those plants, you're making sure that you're repeating the applications according to pesticide label, and you're monitoring what is occurring in your particular area. Like if you're finding that if a capsaicin product's not working in your area, that you're switching off into another, and then come back to the capsaicin. Maybe it'll work better in the spring than it did in the winter, or vice versa, so that you're keeping accurate records to get a feel. Over time, that type of business knowledge is going to give you a competitive edge over your competition. If you do the research and keep that time, it's going to take some trial and error, but a lot of the work has been done for you. Now you just have to tweak it for your, I'm going to use a technical term here, your microclimate, your part of the world, okay, that maybe that research wasn't done in. So hope this has been helpful for you. I would love to hear some success stories out there of people saying, hey, Stephen, appreciated the heads up. Maybe I'll try it this winter as the deer begin to start chomping on people's beloved plants around their houses. Something definitely to think about, and I think this is an underutilized space for wildlife control operators and pest controllers, and I hope that we begin to exploit that and start making some money out there for you. All right, so let me wrap this up. I'm Stephen Vantassel, wildlife control consultant. Thanks again for listening today. I really appreciate it. Definitely take the time to subscribe to our channel. Check us out on Pest Geek Podcast on Facebook, and don't be afraid to reach out if you have questions, comments at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. And remember, I want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.